First of all, Doug, I'd like to share with our audience the genesis and chronological order of how this came about. Y'all excuse me, I'm putting in my teeth.
No, don't do. We're not gonna record that.
Why?
Why?
Why? I want to record it.
You want your teeth recorded?
I want my teeth recorded because that's what I do. I keep it real.
Oh my God.
This is who I am. Y'all can be with me when it's real. See me put my teeth in my mouth.
All right. What I was gonna say is you have already established that.
That was a test. I didn't feel that was a go. I wanted
to go. You're right. Go ahead. All right. Straighten me out, you know. That's okay, go ahead.
My mother's name is Ella Mary Sims, and we're in Grand Rapids, Michigan. She was a stalwart of our community, and she was a community activist. And during the course of her years, she was a published author. And she had a column that she ran in the public newspaper. It was one of their ways back in those days in the 60s and 70s of they're showing their diversity, and she was a black voice that they could accept, and they did. She had an article called "It Seems to Me," and she would just write about and expound on the black experience. In that vein, I came up with this idea due to you and I, our exchanges today over our views on things, just two average black men. I've come to value your perspective. I've come to value our interchange. And the interchanges that we have in our Afrocentricity, I think should be shared. That's how valuable it is to me. And I just want it out there so it can be shared for those who share our perspectives and our point of view. They have an outlet to be able to hear it. Because I don't now. You pointed out to me that out there, I'm not on the net that much. So I'm trying to get more acclimated. Maybe I don't hear it because I ain't going to the right places to hear it. But I just want hours out there. And that's the vein of this whole thing. Go ahead.
Well, I am encouraged. I've been doing this kind of thing for a number of years, but I've never actually broadcast or published. But the things that are on your mind and the things that we've thought about are out there now. You've got Dr. Umar Johnson. You've got Dr. Boyce Watkins. You've got Dick Gregory, and you've got, believe it or not, and this one would be considered a wild card, Minister Louis Farrakhan. Minister Louis Farrakhan isn't just talking about white folks and black folks and 400 years of just cause for reparations. He's talking about the things that affect us going on in the systems and in the government. And since his church is not a church as we know the organized church, in the context of the 501c3, it appears that Minister Farrakhan is free to say what he wants to say. Which reminds me of the fact that on this forum we are free to say what we want to say. Or as you put it earlier, keep it real.
Absolutely.
And at one time, a few years ago, I began to wonder why nobody's talking about what everybody knows. And it's almost as if it was assumed that since everybody knows it, there's no need to talk about it. That's not how it has played out. That's not how it was playing out in the 90s when the old people who lived in the apartment buildings had to pay some thug standing on the steps money, give them a quarter or give them $1 to get back in their house. Right here in Grand Rapids, I heard that was going on. I know it was going on in Detroit. Okay, so everybody knew what was going on, but nobody was talking about anything, and nothing was being done. And so now we're coming in.
Let me stop right there.
Into a new age.
Let me give you one of our main topics. Why ain't nobody talking about it? Why you think ain't nobody talking about it?
It's almost as if it's assumed that since everybody knows it, we don't need to talk about it.
No, I don't think that's why ain't nobody talking about it.
And why do you think nobody's talking?
I think one of the reasons nobody's talking about it is because we've learned from our history.
Yes.
That when we talk about things that are, the establishment of powers will say, no, it's not that way. They would deny, they would not confirm it. And we've learned through conditioning. It don't make no difference what we say. That's why I matter. Because you treat me like I don't matter. It don't make no sense for me to say nothing. You ignore it. Like it ain't true. Now, if I say you shot me in the back, you write a report and say you was killing me, I shot you in the front. Give me that report and say what you say don't matter. But now everybody's on candid camera. You can't do that no more.
Yeah.
So now we speak it up.
When they put cameras on these things, I knew that, or I thought anyway, I don't really know anything, but I thought that the world had changed. Because I considered that with these devices in people's hands, a little old lady could be in her living room, peeping between the curtain, between the Venetian blind, while somebody's standing out in front of her house doing a drug deal. She could take a moving picture of it and send it directly to the police department. That had never been the case before in my lifetime. And now this is the closest we had to that back in the day was a Polaroid. And you still had to get it down there if you were going to do something. And that was not practical. So it's practical today for us to see all kind of things that were hidden or that were not seen before because it happened too fast or it was too remote. Another reason why I thought maybe they weren't talking about it is because it causes trouble. When you are talking about something that is a controversial issue or something that's wrong that needs to be corrected, it depends on who's doing it, whether you want to say anything or not, because of reprisal, because of this thing where people know that something's wrong and something needs to be said, but they don't want you to say anything. Like my mother said to me once, just because it's the truth doesn't mean it has to come out of your mouth.
Why would she be so opposed to you doing it?
Well, I mean,
because of those reprisals, right?
I would say so.
And that's part of the conditioning that we are under as black people. To shut the hell up.
Keep your head down and be quiet.
What you say don't matter. Now look, we talked about this and we can talk about it now to get back to the real basis. Because when you get a foundation of a thing is the nature of a thing.
Yes, that's right.
And so when we get to the foundation, we have to go back to the foundation of what we live in to get to the nature of what we live in. Here's something that we know, and we as black people have been saying for not just years, decades, but for centuries. There's two set of laws in this country. There's the written law that says what is, and there's the unwritten law that is what is.
That is what is, yeah.
We don't get into the saying because we know what says is not what is. We get into what is. And here's what we do. When we started saying what is, they look at us like we crazy. Nigga, is you crazy?
I was encouraged recently because I realized that for a long time, we as black people were talking about these things going on and trying to talk to officials or talk to agencies and so forth. And they, as you pointed out in one of our conversations, would say, you know, people are complaining about things that aren't, and they making stuff up or trying to say there's racism when there isn't, or say there's a problem when there isn't, or say one party is guilty when it's not them, but it's somebody else. But since Trump, stuff's coming out now, just right on the line. I mean, it's right on the money. I mean, it's really what's really going on. And we used to have a saying, you know, back in the 90s, what's really going on? I'm not talking about what they say. I'm talking about what we have to go through day to day.
Let me get back to the point I was making about the basis of the thing. When they ended slavery, and slave owners went from riches to rags.
Right.
Because their wealth was tied up into us, they slaves.
We were a commodity.
So once they became from rich to nothing, and they had to let us go, black men and black people, but especially black men, ever since that day, have never known from the time they dart their door if they're ever coming back. Now, in the old days, immediately, they would just be hijacked and stolen. And that didn't went on for centuries. But the basis of that thing, look, I hold the police department creation was based on the sheriffs hiring local marshals and police to retrieve the slaves. And that's why people of color are still at the base of what they do today, because that's the foundation of it, and that's what they still doing today. We see it today. It's not been going on for decades, but what's thrown a monkey in the wrench is that now when we say it happened, they can't just falsify a report, put down a fake gun, turn their back and say, oh no, you a lie. Now guess what? Pull out your little camera again. Show it again. Smile. Everything's on candid camera. They got the nerve to tell us now we ain't even seeing what we seeing.
Or as Pastor, Zach, Senior Center says, what you see going on is not what you see going on. It ain't what it looks like, in other words. And we've more or less known that for years. It's called the man behind the curtain effect. And it's unfortunate when you have a black man in the White House, which is something that I'm sure that your forebears would love to have lived to see. They died before that happened. My grandmother, I know, would love to live to see, would have cried, and as people did cry when we have the famous photographs of Oprah crying with Jesse, holding hands together, kumbaya, we shall overcome, and everything. But it was unfortunate that with a black man in the White House, this many years after the death of Martin Luther King, with the platform of human rights and civil rights supposedly out on the table, it's unfortunate we have certain things that are going on that people are reporting. A woman dies after a traffic stop in her jail cell in Texas for making a wrong signal or something. It doesn't make any sense that a woman who was just to get a new job next week is going to die in a jail cell after a traffic stop, and it doesn't make any sense that the traffic stop would escalate to jail. Sitting in the car waiting for the ticket, all of a sudden out of the car, in the cruiser, and down to the jailhouse, and then dead. It's unfortunate. So this has an effect on the way people feel about things, because all of these good things are happening, but these bad things are still there, Tony.
They ain't never gone nowhere.
They're still there, and the ones
they've never. Listen, let me say something. Let me start right there. The first time, I'm gonna go back to the first memorable killing where Trayvon Lewis got shot down.
Trayvon Martin.
Trayvon Martin. Okay, Trayvon Martin.
I'll let it.
There's a church. Me and Doug both know. I'm sharing with you all. There's a church in our town called Madison Square, and they're very prolific in the movement of racial healing.
Racial healing.
And they had a town meeting just to gauge the attitude of what's going on, give people a place to vent, and there was a gathering there.
Yeah.
And they split up into a couple groups. There was black and whites, and they wanted all the blacks to be together first and the whites to be together, and then they come back next. And so I'm sitting there with the blacks, and the black people. I was dismayed at the gathering what was being talked about, because one guy got up. Now I'm 67 years old. One guy got up. He was a boomer like me. He wasn't quite as old as me, but he old enough to have known better what he said. He actually said, "Do you mean to tell me that I have to start teaching my sons what my grandmother had to teach us back in the day? You're a black man and you can't be treated like that. Do I have to start doing it again?" I looked at that fool. Start? Why did you ever stop? It ain't never stopped. So I don't understand the attitude of people, black people, who's sitting back and looking at this like it's all so shocking. Guess what? They've been doing it day after day, year after year, decade after decade, century after century. Since they in this segment. This ain't no new thing. It's just with the onslaught of our technology that you just broke down.
Bringing into awareness. Bringing it right to the screen.
Everybody on camera.
Bringing right to your phone.
It's right there.
And right to the police station.
Oh, we've been telling you it's been going on. You've been denying this. You can't deny it now. Now when you put a fake gun down there, we got you on camera putting it down there. Now when you say you was in danger, but we see the gunshot 15 in the back, you weren't in no damn danger.
How in the world are you going to be in danger and the bullets came in the back? And you know what they used to say in the Old West about shooting a man in the back? That was as bad as stealing a horse. If you shoot a man in the back, you're as bad as a horse thief. There is a thing out here called profiling. There is something that has been so recurrent, so repetitive, so redundant that, although redundant may not be grammatically correct, but it keeps happening over and over again. That people are experiencing. They either have experienced themselves, or they know people who've been through it. People who've been stopped in cars on the way home from church. 4 old people in the car, all dressed up. You know, you want to get out of the car? Can we search your glove compartment? Can we search it? I could go into how illegal that is, but you just said it's not new. In 1978.
Wait a minute. You can go into how illegal it is by written law.
I can go written law against what they do.
Let me say this, but I can go in how legal it is with actual law, because they have become a knee-jerk reaction. It's illegal for them to do that to us. Unwritten.
Unwritten. Oh, okay.
But culturally,
well,
legal. They have been culturally, conditioned.
Well, in the trade of police, of law enforcement, there is a gentleman's agreement among the employees of the system of certain things you do on the street which may not be by the book. And that's what you're talking about. You're talking about the person.
I'm talking about the unwritten law of this country, how it pertains to us as black people. That's
I see what you're saying. You're talking about the overall. But what I wanted to say is, in effect, of it not being so new. In 1978, I was profiled on more than one occasion. 1978, 79, 80, on more than one occasion. And that was that many years ago. This is 2016. And like you say, why do people act like it's so shocking? But it's been going on for a long time, and it's an old agenda.
They ain't never stopped.
It's an old agenda. And one of the Dr. Umar Johnson has a problem with black folks who have become, I'll just put it this way, Europeanized Negroes, but he didn't use that description. Because as long as we're comfortable and it ain't me, why do I want to make trouble? Why do I want to stir up the soup? And we got people that are falling through the cracks, as Clyde Sims would say, Minister Clyde Sims, and people who are getting caught on the outside, off the radar by individual police or people or officials who want to cheat or want to deprive you of your dignity or of your rights. And now we've gotten to the place where people are speaking out, and it's coming out because this Trump thing has pulled the trigger and has struck a match.
When you say now we come to the place where people are speaking out, people have been speaking out for years.
But now we're getting to where we can see it.
That's the difference.
We're hearing it now.
That's the difference. See, we've got conditioned. Don't make no sense for you to speak out, nigga, because I'm going to arrange things so it goes according to what I say. Your speech don't matter. Then the technology came out, and we started seeing what we are saying is true. And guess what? This picture says what I say not only matters, but it's the truth. Your shit don't matter.
And the sad thing is that by now, none of this stuff should be happening. None of this stuff should have been dead a long time ago. We should have drained the swamp and cleaned up, all of the old things that all those people died for in the 60s and 70s. And we should be cruising right along now. But we're still fumbling and stumbling. And people are aware of it. One of the things that I want to use it to make a point of is, now that we've established that this is the way things are, what do we do to move people, to think properly, to see properly, and to do and to get in the arrangement we need to be in to do something about it, to do what needs to be done about it. How do we move into that place? What are all of the problems with that?
Well, I can speak on my perspective of things, which is what I do anyway. Quite frankly, from a personal standpoint, I have concluded Jesus to come back before they change. Now, that's my conclusion. Now, listen. Let me say this in relationship to that. In my concluding that, it has piqued my anxiety to go home, because I understand the phrase, biblical phrase, I'm just a stranger passing through. That the base word of that, in that scripture, the word stranger, the base word means resident stranger. Now, how can you be a stranger in your own residence?
That's like an unfamiliar familiarity.
Exactly.
That's like an invisible vision.
There you go.
That's like an inaudible sound. It's backwards and forward at the same time. Sounds like a contradiction, but it is what we're living with.
Let me get back to the point.
It's what we're living in.
Point taken. So, I understand that. And with that understanding, I've seen so much what I call, excuse us when me and Doug have a way of creating our own words. And so I have some of that, a word I call my ridiculosity.
Ridiculosity, yeah.
Hey, listen, what the powers that be, the white man, the system, has done and made it their way of life, their mode of operation.
Modus operandi.
This is how they operate. No matter how things are.
Yes.
Let's tell them what happened is what we wanted to happen. And let everything, arrange things, let it fall into place. Now that has been their modus operandi. That's how they have told us so much ridiculous stuff. It just don't, they've gotten the habit of telling us anything.
What bothers me about that.
And we fought, wait a minute. And we've had, now we didn't fall for it. We didn't fall for it. But what they put into a place is a system, a dominant system that was created that made our lives not matter. Not in action, not in deed, not in word. Our words didn't even matter. And what Obama did, he showed, guess what? Y'all don't know how he did it. That nigga pulled this on you not once but twice. And now you know that what matters, we see a direct response from this system to hiring the first black president. We got the first cowboy in town. Trump is on the way. Guns blazing, red hat on, telling the world, here we come. We gonna make America great again. Great for who? White boy? It's showing for us. Go ahead, dog. Expound. Go.
Well, I had a point I was going to make, but it got all shot up. So I'm like, I have to regather myself. Let me. What was I going to say? Oh, we have seen an example of this, telling you one thing when something else is going on, in the way the media portrays situations and broadcasts their news and tells you a story the way they want it told, and tells you what part of the story they want to tell. And the only people who know what really happened were the ones that were there, and their number is infinitesimal. Their number is too small, and there's nothing they can do. Now with social media now I'm talking about back in the 80s, 70s, this is how it was with the media. They shape whatever they want. Now social media has fixed it so you can put it on YouTube now, instant, Facebook, Instagram, wherever, and But that creates a controversy. How come Facebook or the internet is saying one thing and the TV station is saying something else? You see? And because the devil, which you haven't quite mentioned yet, there's an ancient mind somehow inserting its agenda in the minds of men. The the gospel tells us about this. It's not easy to comprehend, but somehow man's thoughts, his person is being influenced by what we call spiritual warfare. We call it spiritual warfare. It is a warfare that we can't see, we can't hear, but we see the results of, and we can feel it. We can feel the spiritual. We can't see it, we can't hear it, but we can see the results, and sometimes we can see the movement. But you start talking like this, and people think you're a spook because you start being superstitious and religious, and you're talking all of this kind of stuff. But that's not really what's going on here. What's going on here is the difference between your thinking when you believe that God is and is a rewarder of them that seek him, and your thinking when you say there is no God. When you think that the scientists have told you the truth about a Big Bang and about evolution and about everything happening for its own reasons, to itself, by accident. Now, how does that sound? How does that sound? We have a tendency to easily be bamboozled, because when we have the hoodwink, we've got the hood over our eyes. What's that thing they say? The blinders on. Because it is a conditioning that is in the place we exist. We are conceived in sin and born into iniquity, into this reality. And because of our human weaknesses and flaws and failings, we acclimate and then we accept. If your mama taught it to you, you have a tendency to retain it. If your father was like that, you have a tendency to retain it. It's called tradition. And we have been going through time, forward through time, facing backward as a people, as a civilization.
What do you mean by that?
Even though every new moment is what we call the future, even the future is becoming the present every time a minute elapses. Okay, even though we are moving forward, we are turned around to indoctrination, tradition, experience, and personal opinion about it. Our upbringing, our breeding. We're going forward, but we're facing backwards. All the old things, trying to preserve old things, trying to preserve the ways of our family, the ways of parents, the ways of previous administration, the ways of previous management, memories, and they're preserved because they are foundational things. Foundational things shouldn't change, but it is confused. Everything is confused about what's important, what isn't, what's foundational, and what isn't. It's a big black hole. It's a region out in space where it involves foundation and values, and culture has just skipped back and forth across the line between good and bad values and upbringing, and the church has skipped back and forth between sound doctrine and unsound doctrine. And because of that, when the reality comes, what tools do we have to work with?
On May 18th, 1968, Stokely Carmichael gave a speech in Fountain Street Church. Yeah. And in it, he talked about the misgivings or if you know, that's too late a word, the out and out lies of our educational system, and teaching us lies about me and withholding away truth from me. Ever since, I've never gave any. I've redesignated institutes of higher learning to institutes of liar learning.
Yes. Yeah.
But let me say this though, as I want to say this in relationship to that. Now, you just talked about two. There's the knowledge, the world knowledge, and then there's God's knowledge. And as you just referred to both sets, we will do that from time to time in our course of explaining life. In the subject of life we talk about. And that's one of them. That two sets of knowledge. And here's what I come to find out as I had to face my Afrocentricity, when I had to face my everything's black and white, once I gave my life to Christ, and I got opened up to God's knowledge, because listen to this, there is a commentator. A commentator is a guy who expounds on the meaning of Scripture. His name is Matthew Henry. He's one of the first ones. One of the first gifts I got from a guy by the name of Reuben Smart was a set of his commentaries. It was all in book form. They didn't have the little, you can look it up on your phone and all that stuff. And Matthew Henry in his commentation says this. He says, at the point of time of you accepting the truth of Christ with a pure heart, your mind is opened up to a level of truth that you can't get or comprehend until you know and love Christ.
That would appear to be true. That's been my experience.
So then, when I was caught up in the world level, I started to say ground level. Now we'll kind of call it ground level. Ground level is earth, ground level. Perspective knowledge, world knowledge. It made me think that my warfare was black and white. Because history maintained that, and the powers of the unseen world had me fixate on that. But that's just a skirmish. Black and white is a skirmish. My battle is not against white people, nor my enemy only white people. Because I got a whole lot of battles amongst my own people, and a whole lot of enemies amongst my own people, because the battlefield is not black and white. It's good and evil. It's God, the unseen powers, and Satan, the world, and the seen powers doing that.
And we are in the middle of it, and it can't be comprehended. It can only be accepted. And once you accept it, then you follow the tenets of the gospel, or you get some exposure. If you receive it, then you get the benefits from it as it comes into you. The Bible repeatedly talks about uses the in word. I'm not talking about the in word we know. I'm talking about the word in.
I am.
In you, in Christ, in Him, in. It constantly talks about in. And we don't comprehend that until we receive from God in order to comprehend that that's a spiritual statement. And even the secular world has contact with it. They may not understand it, they may not practice it, but we've heard the phrase, what's gotten into you? When people are acting a certain way, what's gotten into you? It's as if I can't control myself. I'm so angry, I'm going to do this, or I'm feeling so strongly about something that I can't restrain myself. That touches on what the spiritual is all about, because there's far more power in the spiritual than there is in the carnal. But we don't learn it that way. We can't teach Christ from the cradle through the nursery up to children. It seems like each human being has to find out his own way for himself. And I think it was designed that way. Because if we could teach it, if we could mass produce it, people would get it if they want it. But that's what's really going on now. If people want truth, knowledge, and salvation and deliverance, they do get it. But it's a very difficult process. Very difficult to understand, and there's so much confusion out here. You can't get people to understand what you're saying if they don't want to hear it. You can't get people to understand the meaning of what you're saying if they don't have a certain amount of experience and a certain amount of education. And my hope would be that we would find a way to get the truth to people who otherwise wouldn't hear it, and find new ways to do it because the old ways have failed.
So we use all of our senses, our cognitive senses. We see, come to mental conclusions through our senses in the world, outside of the spirit, in our flesh. Our carnal way of perceiving is hands touch observation. We look, we use our senses, then we analyze, and then if we see and agree, we accept as truth. That's man's way. We see to believe. Now here's what God say his way is. He says in his word, you must first believe who I am. Well, if I have to believe before I look to see to believe, I must believe before I see. The man would naturally say, how can I believe without seeing? God says it's in you to believe because I put it there.
All right.
So you got to know me in the spirit to be able to see me in the carnal.
Okay. All right.
So now, what we seek to believe, God's way is how different? We believe to see. Once we, like Matthew Henry was saying, get to my point. When we believe with a pure heart, that's what legitimizes you as being real. How do you know the real from the hypocritical? How do you know the real from the play? What you think is real with a pure heart in God is real. What you say is real without a pure heart in Christ is hypocritical. My definition.
Okay.
It seems to me. But until you, here's what Matthew Henry says, and I believe this. He says, when you believe with a pure heart, the gospel in the simplest form is the virgin birth, the birth, the birth of that virgin, the virgin conception, the virgin birth, perfect life, crucified death, gave up the ghost on his own, rose on the third day for our sins. That's the gospel of Christ. When you believe that, now I'm giving you what it seems to me, everybody. That's the name of our little broadcast. That's what me and Doug kick around all the time.
Seems to me.
Seems to me. That my understanding of truth is, once you believe that, your mental capabilities, your mental capability to receive God's truth on a spiritual level now has opened up and opened you up to a whole new realm of truth that you didn't have before that confession. And what you got at that confession was, the Bible says, the Spirit came in you and has dwelt in you and will be there till the day of his coming back. I believe that. And once that got in you, you have the capability to understand that he is who he says. Now here's what the Bible says. Once that happens, the Bible says this: you must first believe that he is.
And that he is a rewarder of them that seek him.
No, not just, no, get it right. That what seek?
That he is a rewarder of them that seek him.
No, that diligently and
diligently seek him.
That's important.
Those that diligently seek him.
Now, if you think you just gonna sit back in your chair and just go say, "Okay, I believe," now do with me what you gonna do, God. You get it wrong. It's not just believe; it's diligently.
This is what we
now. Let me tell you what the meaning of diligence is. You take your most valuable piece of jewelry and misplace it and don't know where. Your activity to find it, that's diligence. You will tear up the house. That's what your effort is seeking him. You take whatever it is in the world you seek after or have sought after. At its highest level. And then you understand that seeking him has to be higher.
Well,
That's what diligence means.
Yeah.
When you see him on that level, I guarantee you nothing but success. He gonna show up, as the old folks say. He gonna show up
and show out.
He gonna show out.
It's interesting you should use that phrase because
Yeah.
I've been very disappointed in the organized church. The way these preachers will say God is going to show up and show out. And because of my experience in accepting and attempting to receive the mind of Christ, and it says, "Be this mind also in you that was in Christ Jesus." We're supposed to have the mind of Christ, the Spirit of God, and if those things are there, there is a change that you really can't explain in secular terms, because our descriptions are carnal, and this spiritual thing is on another level, and so you can't get the package to serve people's understanding.
A lot of times when you make a statement, you're putting the power of success on us as people, on man. Man ain't got nothing to do with it. The only thing we fail in is understanding the process, and here's the process. When I said that once you accept that, you are sealed with the Spirit in, but there takes upon us, even though that capability is inside, we have to activate it. It says you got to activate it every day. You won't have access to that power until you activate that power. I want to address our viewers right now. And I want to say this. Now, this is not a live broadcasting, so it's not like you can call us.
Yeah.
And request a topic. When you see us in a recording, and you see me and Doug do this all the time, and we hit 1,000 topics. Now, if in this recording you see a topic you would like us to expound on, or you want input, this is our first taping. We're going to have a number. We're going to have this set up properly. Doug's a genius, believe me, people. He knows how to do this, and we just roughshod this to get started. When it's over with, we will have a number that you can at least call in and leave topics that you want us to see us comment on. It just seems to us, two regular black men, just to give an Afrocentric point of view to what we see going on in the world, because we ain't seeing it a lot the way we like to expound on it. We hope you enjoy it, but when we get to that point, you'll see it coming later taping with a number. And if you see us point on the top, you say, we want you to expound out, leave a name on the number. When we get that number, leave a message. Let us know if you want us to talk on it, expound on it, or you might have to leave it on there. We're going to get to that. We're not there yet. We'll let you know when we are. But that's where we're headed. We appreciate you. We love you. And we hope you can appreciate what we do. We certainly do. Enough to share it with you. God bless.
Social media has made it, things like tapings or recordings like this, of more value, because they can be posted, and then communication
uncontrolled.
As Louis Farrakhan said in 1997, uncensored message. That Minister Farrakhan made a speech on that very subject some years ago, and I used it in a project. We are not followers. I am not a follower of Minister Farrakhan. I don't believe that Tommy is, but he can tell you for himself. But some of the things many of the things that these prominent personalities that we see in the media say cannot be denied. And when Minister Farrakhan speaks stuff and has documentation, well, the thing you want to do is check the documentation. The references that are given allow us to do that now. We can Google the Library of Congress, and we can find out if such and such a document exists, and what such and such and such and so. Look at what they're coming out with, as a matter of fact, Tommy, about Trump's father. They've got all these pictures about Trump's father and stories about his father, his grandfather, and all this kind of things. So when you see a video that has a website or an email that you can contact, it makes it possible for us to communicate, and we can talk about things, and we can answer and have a discussion. We may not be able to answer questions and come up with solutions, but we can have discussions, and hopefully that these things will lead to knowledge of what to do about certain things, about the things we face. because we can't just let what we've seen over the past 30 years, we just can't let it go. We can't just let whatever's going to happen happen, and it ain't me, and I'm glad, we see children out on the street. Well, I'm glad he ain't one of mine, and we see people being mistreated by the police. Well, I ain't out here acting a fool, so I don't have to worry about it. We all have to worry about it. Pastor Tommy was very emotive. He was very excited in his expression at the beginning of this particular session about how it was and how it is and how it's always been. And I'll say this to that. That's the way it's always going to be unless we renew our minds and we begin to care about foundational things and start reconstructing building blocks for the salvation of ourselves and for the preservation of what we call culture. We have to figure out what culture we want to build and how we want that culture to be, and we have to have the tools to work with. And so this is just an expression of our hope. Thank you for watching, and be aware.